You are listening to the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast, episode 49. This week on the show, we're sharing with you our New Year's resolutions, and we also have a first in-person interview at Mount Airy Farm with Tayloe Emery. All right, welcome to the 49th episode of the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast, where your on-demand audio source for all things waterfowl and waterfowl hunting. You can find us all over the internet, hpoutdoors.com, iTunes, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Tumblr. We're on all that good stuff. If you're into Facebook, you can check out our listeners group, the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast listeners group. Come in there, chat with some other listeners of the show, talk waterfowl, talk whatever. Not hard to find us. If you'd like to reach out to us directly, you can, of course, do so through any of the social media platforms, and you can also do that at info@hpoutdoors.com. Joining me on the show this week, as he always does, is Dan Harushka. Dan, what's going on, man?
Oh, episode 49. I don't know if everyone knows, but I'm a 49ers fan, which that resulted. So weird. I know. Well, I was born in California. My brother was a Raiders fan, and I couldn't go along with that. So I'm a 49ers fan. Being episode 49, we just hired Chip Kelly as the head coach, which who knows?
Wait, hold on. You're a we guy? Like when you refer to the 49ers, you say we?
Not like we are Penn State, your style.
That's intense.
No, but just coming through with it, but Chip Kelly, and I don't know. It's been a sad couple years, so we'll see. We'll see what happens there.
Oh boy. Wow, that has just completely knocked me off my train of focus here.
I know.
This show.
Well, on top of that,
we're literally a minute into the show and we're already in the gutter.
On top of that, my wife is 7 hours away, so I had the kids all weekend, and she's watching Madonna in Louisville, Kentucky. So I hope she's having fun.
Madonna, the Material Girl?
Like a virgin, and my wife is down there in some leather pants and cut-off sleeves and neon gloves, fishnet style. I don't know. It's weird.
This is getting awkward.
Yeah.
This is getting awkward.
So
okay, well, anyway, let's go ahead and progress forward here. We're still kind of getting used to this whole monthly release thing, and I feel like there's a lot that's happened since the last time we had an episode, so we got a lot to cover here. So this week we're going to get into, we'll talk about some things that have been going on in the news. We've got an Ask HP question. We've got another retriever training quick tip from Barton Ramsey, Southern Oak Kennels. As I mentioned in the intro, we're going to discuss our New Year's resolutions, and then we actually have a first in this episode. This is the first time we've ever done this. I had the opportunity to travel down to Warsaw, Virginia, and hunt with Tayloe Emery at the Mount Airy Farm. And for those not from this area, the Mount Airy Farm is a sort of a historical landmark. Large 1,400 acre farm down in a very historic area of Virginia. So I get, Tayloe it was awesome and invited us down there. And so I went down and hunted with him and stayed at the farmhouse that's been in his family for over 200 years. And the farm itself's been in his family for over 400 years. And, just kind of chatted with him. So if you're a history buff, kind of a cool place, there's a signee of the Declaration of Independence that's buried on the property, and he talks about that and stuff. So it was really cool to get down there and talk with Tayloe. So we'll share that interview with you. And as I said, it was the first one that we've ever done sort of in person where we went to the location. So really cool and excited to how that turned out. So we obviously got a lot of ground to cover here this episode. So why don't we go ahead and just roll sort of into it? I got to tell you, Dan, with the way your seasons are up there in Pennsylvania now, are you still hunting? What's going on there?
Well, with the duck, it's broken into a few zones. duck is done now. We had a New Year's hunt where it always seems our New Year's hunts are really good with geese. This year we tried the duck out, and I got a banded mallard, so that kind of took advantage of or took place of a large pile of Canadas. But let's see here. The main place that we hunt is out for goose right now. We have another week in the zone that I live in, but I probably won't hunt that this last week. But then the whole month of February, we have our main area of goose hunting comes back in. So hopefully we get back out over there and put them on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not like I'm not trying to imply anything here, so don't take this the wrong way, but I feel like you've had a tougher year this year than what I recall, in years past. And, it seems like you've yet to really get on a real, buster type hunt that usually you guys get a handful of those every year where you just pound them.
Yeah, we had, the opener and way back in September was good, and, a couple other good shoots, and duck season, but the goose season hasn't played out like usual. But we got the late season, and there's quite a few birds around. We just need to get where they're feeding, and once they come back in here in a few weeks, we'll be on them.
Yeah, well, I can tell you right now, if you like hunting in fog, you should come to Virginia, because that's all we do down here is hunt in fog. I mean, it's been so warm. And it's just, we've had so much fog. It's been crazy. I mean, I was out this morning on the river, and it's the heaviest fog I've ever hunted in. When you hear that like proverbial wall of fog, I mean, that's what we had. Our visibility was so low, had the diver spread out. And, I learned two very valuable lessons today that I just want to share real quick with people. Maybe you've had experience with this and can kind of get with what I'm saying here, or maybe you'll disagree, but this was my experience. So we were hunting on a low tide condition this morning. So when we got to the blind, we had no water for about 15 yards in front of our blind. We knew that the water would come in throughout the morning, but when we were setting up, there was no water for about 15 yards in front of our blind. So we're setting up, 6 dozen diver decoys on long lines and stuff like that. So we essentially started setting them, just inside the water, because my intuition was telling me that the birds we're going to kind of end up short landing our decoys, because I didn't want to run sort of lines vertically out from the blind, because, I've got 90-foot lines. So that puts them 30 yards at the farthest end of the line, plus another 15, right? So you're talking 45 yards from the blind at the very end of the lines if I did that. And, unless they come all the way up the lines, I mean, you're talking pretty far shooting. So we decided to run them parallel to the blind. The wind kind of worked that way, and we made a pocket at one end. So that made our farthest line at about 30 yards, 35 yards out for us, which, is right on the line of where we'd like to shoot. But just given the tide situation, it was about the best we could do. And man, every bird that we had work landed just short of that outer line. And we ended up taking 4 this morning. We should have had a lot more, which leads me to my second point that I learned very, very quickly this morning, is that when you have fog and limited visibility, we're hunting off of in a creek, off of a a big river, the main channel. And I thought, well, let's run a spinner so that, if something, to try to raise our visibility a little bit given the conditions. Well, we had several flocks of ducks circling us, and you could just tell they wanted to come in. I mean, they were dropping elevation. They were getting down just out of gun range. But I think with the, that kind of flat gray look that the heavy fog created and the low ceiling, I mean, these ducks were picking out that mojo like nobody's business. I mean, it was just, we would have buffleheads coming in, getting ready to fly up the line. They'd see the spinning wing decoy and just hook a hard 90 and go the other direction altogether. So, I mean, we had, a group of ducks. I couldn't really tell. The fog was so thick, I really couldn't tell if they were black ducks or gadwall or something. They were larger body ducks, dark ducks, and they were swimming in the periphery of the spread, but they would not get any closer than 60, 70 yards, because anytime they got a little bit closer, they would just back away from that decoy. So we cut that decoy off, and we finally had birds just finishing into the spread. So that's when we started, capitalizing on some opportunities. So we would have done a lot better, I think, had we not had that out first thing. I think we would have had a better shoot. But like I said, we don't have a large number of ducks right now. We haven't had a big push yet. I don't know if we're going to get it, but we got some cold weather coming, so I'm hoping at least maybe some of these ponds and things in the backwaters will lock up and force what birds we do have out to the bigger rivers, and that spread that we got, we'll pull them in. So we'll see how it goes, but it's been challenging. But those were two things that I learned, today. I'm not going to throw the spinner back out until we got sun and clear skies and stuff like that. And then, two, if you're going to set up long lines, be prepared that, if they stop your spread by, 3-5 yards, make sure that that's in your effective kill range. So, I don't know if you've had any experiences like that because you don't dive or hunt, but when you do, you want to keep that in mind when you set your spread. And
you're open till end of January? Is that right?
Yeah, we can hunt ducks till the 31st of January, and then we have till in our zone till mid-February to hunt geese.
Nice. Well, we have that nor'easter coming and pushing some cold weather in, so hopefully you get some of those.
Yeah, I'm going to be going out on Monday, Martin Luther King Day, when this episode releases, and we're calling for a high of 25 degrees, so it's going to be cold. And like I said, hopefully that locks up the backwater. But I mean, for us here in Virginia, really, yeah, it's nice to have cold weather here because that locks up some of our backwaters and makes it easier to hunt. But as far as pushing birds down, I mean, we need it to be cold in up in Canada, in Pennsylvania, and across the Great Lakes regions, in New York, upstate New York, and those areas, New Jersey. We need those places to get on freeze and lock up, because that's where the majority of our birds are going to come from. So, if those areas haven't got cold yet, we're not going to get the birds. So, who knows? This is one of those years where we just, I don't know if it's going to get here in time. Last year we got divers real good the last 2-3 weeks of the season. And then we had a real good push of puddle ducks and some divers in November. This year we haven't had any of that. We had a big push of gadwalls come through our area right before the November season opened, and they actually had gone before they headed out before the season opened the following weekend. So it's been a crazy year. We've got tons of geese though, so I think we still got some good goose hunts left in our season, but we're trying to get on some ducks here before they go out, but it's been tough going. So anyway, let's go ahead and roll into the meat of the show here, and we got a few stories to talk about, so let's get into some waterfowl news. All right, Dan. So, I mean, there's been some major stories kind of going down here over the last month or so. And before we get into one that most people are probably familiar with, it is a little not as fun to talk about. Let's talk about something that's fun to talk about. The Powerball, man, going crazy. 1.5 billion people freaking out, right? I know you were playing, I was playing, fingers crossed, all that kind of stuff. And it's funny because I know how small the odds are. Right? I mean, you got a better chance of getting struck by lightning twice on the same day or whatever it is. It's crazy. But I can't help it, man. Every time I buy a ticket, I ask my wife, what if tomorrow when we wake up, our lives are changed forever? What would you do? What would you do? So I'm going to ask you, let's say you won, obviously we know now that you did not, but let's say one day you win, the Powerball, a substantial amount. What are you doing with it?
This is crazy, and we didn't talk about this beforehand, but I was reading a thing, what Mark Cuban said to do, for the winner that won that money, and he was saying, obviously, hire a tax person, an attorney, set up a trust, all that kind of stuff. But one of the things that really stood out to me was he said, "Don't give your family any money." They didn't ask for it before, and you shouldn't give it to them now. And I was like, man, if that was me, the first thing I would do is, pay off my debt, obviously, and then any of my family that had debt, I would pay that off without a problem. I mean, you're talking, no matter what you put in there, say you won the whole thing, if you just put that in a bank account, you're still making like $32 million a year off of interest. So, and that's if you took a lump sum. And I'm thinking, if I couldn't live off $32 million a year and give my family some money, like what are you doing with that? I don't know.
Okay, so you're gonna pay your family's debt off. That's fantastic. Get me the good stuff. What are you gonna do, man? I mean, you just won $1.5 billion. You're gonna splurge on something, right?
Yeah, it definitely, property in Arkansas, something like that. Have a big old camp down there. Seriously, if I won $1.5 million, me and some of my closest friends probably would never work again, and we would hunt or set up for hunts all the time.
So I'm a close friend, right?
Yeah, I mean that's no joke. Until we ran out of $1.5 billion, we'd have some fun.
Yeah, I got to chuckle. Somebody on the Waterfowls listeners group on Facebook, I think I saw someone said Tony Vandemore would be their personal
guide
or something. That cracked me up. But I've always said something very similar to kind of what you're saying. I would buy a piece of property somewhere that was large enough to where, that's what I would do. I would just work the property and, for ducks, kind of like you see, if you follow, Tony on social media, kind of like what he does. He just farms for ducks all year. I'd pretty much do the same thing. And if you ever wanted to see me, you'd have to come to me because I'm not leaving there. I'm not traveling anywhere. You're going to just, my spot will be nice and you're more than welcome at any time. But if you want to see me, that's where I'll be. So, yeah, that's all I would do. I would just hunt, I would hunt and, be responsible. The biggest thing that I was worried about is keeping some sort of sense of normalcy for my son. He's 4.5 years old. What is he, he won 1.5 billion. I mean, he's not going to live a normal life. That's just crazy. It's crazy stuff. But, as far as small as the odds are, you can't help but having that discussion. It is fun to kind of talk about. So, but that's been big news, over here in the last month. So I wanted to bring that up. The other story I wanted to bring up is unfortunately not so fun to talk about. And, this pretty much directly correlates as to what our last week's, Foul Friday, or 2 weeks ago, I guess now, Foul Friday quick tip was about safety. And that's, the unfortunate circumstances, surrounding the passing of Craig Strickland and his buddy there in Oklahoma, I guess it was. Dan, it's unfortunate because you see it every year. People are out duck hunting and, for whatever reason end up in a bad spot and end up, losing their life over a tough, a situation where they get into a spot where they can't, get to safety. And, this one was a little different because it had a lot of national attention because of who he was. But, I know you see it a lot and I see it almost every year down here in Virginia on the Potomac River where I hunt, guys, boat gets capsized and things like that. So, I hate to try to spin a positive out of a terrible situation, but I really hope that, people take a second and just think about your situation, when you're going out to hunt. I mean, the irony of the fact that they actually sent out a tweet beforehand saying that they, were going into the storm and if they don't make it back or whatever. I mean, that just that's heart, that breaks my heart. He's got a wife, I don't know if he has kids or what have you, but I mean, you got to think about other people than you. And I'm not trying to bring the whole show down here or whatever, but it's really unfortunate, but it's the reality of what we do. We're out chasing ducks in water in the worst of the worst conditions. You know what I mean? And, there's just some days where the most important safety tip that you can do, is to know that today's not a good day to go out and not push it. Even if it's the Saturday that you have off and it's the only one that you got, there will be other Saturdays down the road, but you got to be here for them. And, some of the weather that we've had in the Midwest this year has been just crazy. And, anybody that's listening to this show, I just hope that they take that to heart and, really, really think about it and think about the people that you love when you're, we all think that we can handle it and, we got it under control and we've done this a million times and all that kind of stuff, but you just never know when you're going to get into situations. So don't press it. And, there'll be more ducks to hunt another day. So, unfortunately, that's been sort of one of the biggest stories kind of in the waterfowl world over the last month or so.
Yeah, and it doesn't, it's one misstep and you're in a bad situation. And, like you said, just take it to heart and really just be careful. And, going into my first piece of news here too, it's out of Wichita, Kansas, which I'm a little partial to from playing ball out there a couple years. But a man was shot in a hunting-related incident, and he did survive. He was shot in the mid to lower torso. He was said the incident happened in northwest Grant County, where the two individuals were hunting sandhill cranes. When he was airlifted, he was conscious, talking, and responsive. But that's just another bad situation that you don't want to find yourself in. So, make sure you know where you're pointing the gun and all the safety stuff. So, on top of that, let's see here. Colorado has they named their 2016 waterfowl stamp art competition winner. The winner out of 20 entries, they get a grand cash prize of $3,500. So it's pretty cool. The Colorado Waterfowl Stamp Program started in 1990 and provides funding to conserve wetlands for waterfowl and other wetland-dependent wildlife. You have to be, if you are 16 years or older of age, it is required by state law to purchase this. So I find that interesting because, around our area there's a lot of waterfowl habitat that has not been maintained, and there's a little bit of scuttlebutt going around at the symposium that they're trying to start a state stamp, and with that proceeds going to pretty much cleaning up the wetlands here. And they have the swamp machines that cut the brush out and really allow the waterfowl to come back in. Like we talk about the numbers are up, and the good old days of back when there were just clouds of ducks in this area. Well, the ducks aren't here, and mainly most of the stops are overgrown and filled in and aren't the wetlands that they used to be. So the property is there, but it's not being maintained due to budget cuts and all that. So I would like to see Pennsylvania come out with that, and I would pay extra to have something like that happen and get the birds back in this area.
It's interesting because I grew up in Pennsylvania. I've been, buying an out-of-state license for several years. It's never dawned on me that Pennsylvania didn't have a state stamp. That is strange. I don't know how I missed that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is one of those things where everyone kind of gets irritated when, the state jacks up the price of licenses, and then, you go out to hunt public ground and things like that, and there's no habitat, they're poorly maintained, there's no birds, and it's just kind of rubs you the wrong way. You're paying more for what? I think from a waterfowler's perspective, when you buy stamps and things like that, and that that's going directly to, benefit what you're doing out there and the games that you're pursuing. I think that's something that we can all kind of get with. So, if I got to pay another $15 or whatever it is when I come up there to hunt, I'll more than gladly stroke that check to help out the habitat up there.
Yeah.
So,
and there's another conservation program starting up. A guy that used to run Delta, the Allegheny chapter, which is down in Pittsburgh. He's trying to get a bunch of people together and start another program to where all the money stays locally and goes into the wetlands that we do have. Like Pymatuning has a swamp buster machine. It cuts all the really junky trees and brush out of these swamps, but it hasn't been in production for a few years now. When I say a few, probably like 10 or 15. So, you can't bust Delta or DU, but when you make a lot of money and that money goes to different flyways, he's trying to start something to where any money raised stays in this flyway, stays in this state, and can accomplish good things. So, good luck to him with that, and I hope things do happen around here.
Yeah, I don't know how much traction that effort's going to get, to be honest with you, but the state stamp would be a good start for sure. But the reality of it is, such a large percent of ducks winter in the prairie pothole region and things like that. So that's where the majority of the funds are going to go, from a DU and a Delta perspective and things like that. So, but that's a completely different discussion that I really don't want to get into because we're already going to go way over the time slot that we had anticipated for this show. But, that's kind of the deal. I mean, when we don't have episodes as frequently, we got stuff to talk about, and, I want to, we want to have those conversations. So I'm not going to worry about time. I'm going to stop looking at the clock here and just talk hunting and talk stuff, and it is what it is. So, but let's go ahead and roll into something a little more fun. Now, we've been kind of melancholy here with that news segment and a lot of stuff. Bad. So let's get into our Ask HP question.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
All right, and this week's Ask HP question is brought to you by Higdon Outdoors. Quality, service, innovation. That is Higdon Outdoors. Visit HigdonDecoys.com. All right, Dan, this week's, I keep saying weeks, but I guess it's this month's Ask HP question comes from Tyler Nelson. And Tyler wants to know, how do you talk to your hunting partners about, concealment and pie facing and stuff like that? You know what he's talking about, Dan. You're hunting with your buddies and you got birds working, and then for whatever reason they won't finish. They're flaring, and you look down the blind and you see somebody staring up at them with a big white face, showing, or, aren't brushing up their blind good enough, and you think they're sticking out and kind of stuff. How do you broach that topic with somebody?
I think it's to preface it a little bit, he was invited with his brother and a friend, and they have a 15-foot bare aluminum boat. They put it right next to the blind, upside down. It was glaring. Black hats, no face paint, no, just like you said, pie facing. So, if I was in that situation, it's probably something I want to get invited again, so I'm not going to be a jerk about it. But, I'd probably approach my brother and just say, there's a lot of successful guys that, the main thing is concealment. And, my response to him was, I think there's validation when, the duck commander, Phil Robertson, paints his face. The whole group does. I think there's validation when Tim Ground's motto is get down, cover up. Concealment is a huge part of success. And if you get picked out, you're not going to have a successful day. And, that's the bottom line to it. So, I think like I said, I would approach my brother, talk to him before we went out again, and, see if he could talk to his friends and see if there's something that I could do to, help cover up the boat, or maybe buy some kind of blind to help the situation out.
Yeah. I mean, I would bet, whatever. My money is on the fact that they're seeing the boat. That's, if you're hunting a blind or something like that, they're used to seeing that blind every day. And then all of a sudden on Saturday morning, there's a big aluminum boat parked beside it. They're smart enough to know that that's not the deal. As far as, pie face and stuff like that, I mean, honestly, yeah, I know you got to tiptoe lightly given this particular situation, and you want to be invited back and things like that. But I mean, if you're going to hunt with somebody that's pie facing all the time, you're not going to kill birds. And so what's the point of going back? And you know what I mean? I think you got to bring it up to them, but you got to be tactful. You got to, preface it, whatever it is, try to tiptoe into it before, you just cuss them out and tell them to keep their head down or whatever. But yeah, I mean, it has to be said, you know what I mean? I don't, because not only are you doing yourself a disservice for that hunt, but you're doing that guy a disservice. You know what I mean? Maybe he just doesn't know, maybe he doesn't know, and then think about that. Or whatever the case might be, but, you're helping that guy out in the long run. And if it hurts his feelings, that day, well, maybe next weekend, if he goes out and paints his face or puts on a face mask and covers up his boat with some burlap or something, and then he shoots more ducks, maybe he'll be like, man, he was onto something, and all of a sudden you've done him, solid, and he, you're back in the hunt or whatever. But, it's a delicate situation. I can definitely, empathize with that. And, I think that the boat, covering the boat is the big thing, because the whole face painting thing is, it's whatever. A lot of people do it. A lot of people don't. Those people still kill birds, it's whatever. But you know, if your boat's sticking out and it's big and aluminum and it's right beside you, that's going to probably cause you problems. So anyway, we appreciate Tyler reaching out to the show, and Tyler, send us your info, either email, Facebook, whatever, and we'll get you out a free barrel sticker for helping us out. And if you'd like to hear your question on the show, feel free to reach out to us, and if we use it, we'll send you a free barrel sticker as well. So thank you to Tyler. And Dan, we're going to now transition into your favorite part of every episode, which is the retriever training quick tip with Barton Ramsey, Southern Oak Kennel. And Barton's been busy, man. He was recently filming on an episode of the Grind Waterfowl Television. He had the Southern Oak Kennels sort of alumna hunt or whatever it is. So he's been a busy dude. So we appreciate him helping us out this month with a tip. So why don't we roll that tip, and then we'll cover it on the other side.
Hey guys, this is Barton Ramsey from Southern Oak Kennels with your retriever training quick tip of the episode. First episode of 2016, and I want to talk about just a simple New Year's resolution, and that is to work with your dog at least 3 days a week for 15 minutes. And I know this is difficult for some guys, but I can't tell you the issues we see in the fall from guys who have not worked their dog in the spring and the summer. Dogs are not robots, so even if you've had your dog professionally trained for years, if you were to take that dog and just let them relax, sit on the couch and eat Doritos all summer and fall, you're probably going to run into some problems when waterfowl season starts. So we're a good ways through the waterfowl season. We've been shooting a lot of birds and hunting with guys and their dogs and hunting our own dogs, and have just encountered a lot of issues with some guys who show up on hunts and they have dogs they've trained, and you could tell they just weren't quite prepared. And so the time to be preparing is not in the seasons, before the season. So as we think about moving into next season, maybe you guys are just now getting a puppy, maybe you plan to get a dog, maybe you've got a dog and you notice some rusty areas in this year's season. I just hope that you guys can commit. Obviously, it'd be even better to work your dog 5 days a week, but I think 3 days for 15 minutes and you can actually make traction and headway with your dog. And so just want to talk briefly about how we recommend to structure 15 minutes. You've only got 15 minutes of daylight when you come home in the spring and fall, or you've only got 15 minutes up with the dog before you have to head to work. How do you make the most? We recommend spending the first 5 minutes doing nothing but obedience. And so you would do a lot of heel work, keeping the dog on lead, turning a lot of circles, walking figure eights at heel, remote sit, have the dog sit, step away from the dog. Half of the time we recommend going back and picking up the leash and then heeling the dog off of remote sit. The other half of the time we recommend recalling the dog, calling the dog to you from remote sit. Don't do either one exclusively, or you'll create a habit in the dog of always expecting that. We can talk about that on another episode. But do a lot of remote sit, place training, anything to do with obedience, but no retrieving work. Just 5 minutes of loosening the dog up, getting the dog focused on you, focused on obedience. Lots of praise, lots of control. And then we recommend doing some retrieves. We start with a memory retrieve, which we've gone over before. Toss out a bumper, take the dog, heel the dog back however far you want to go, and then you can do several things. You can line the dog up and send the dog like it's a blind retrieve. You can sit the dog down and you can walk further on and give the dog a back cast to just sharpen the dog on confidence of when you say back, the dog knows, oh yeah, it's right behind me. You can sit the dog and walk to the side and use either a left or right overcast to send back to the memory. We recommend starting off and ending with a memory retrieve that has at least some sort of distance, at least 60, 70 yards up to as far as you want to do it. And then in the middle of that, between the memory retrieves, we recommend doing 2 different drills, one involving marking and then another drill involving either lining or casting. So for marking, if you're by yourself, we recommend standalone marks. So sit your dog down, tell your dog to sit, walk away from the dog however far, say hey, hey, toss the bumper or toss 2 bumpers, and then you can do one of 2 things. You can either send the dog from where they're sitting by calling its name and giving it a little bit of a hand motion to go that way toward the bumper, or you can walk back to the dog, line the dog up, and send the dog on the mark. But do a couple of those marks like that on your own, standalone marks, and then work into some sort of handling drill. You can do wagon wheels, which you can find on YouTube, and we may have covered them before. If not, we'll cover them soon. You can do, casting. You can do sending to a pile. You can set up a short T drill. You can do walking baseball. Lots of drills you can find on YouTube that will sharpen your dog's three-handed casting and blind work, and then end it with another memory, a difficult memory. And within 15 minutes, you can cover a lot of ground. You can gain momentum with the dog moving forward, build confidence, take advantage of the time that you have. And that way, when next season comes, not only will you be ready to shoot ducks, but your dog will be ready to pick them up. We hope this has been helpful. For more information, you can reach us at southernoakkennels.com on our website, or visit us on Facebook. We'll be happy to talk on there as well. Hope you guys are having a great new year so far.
All right. Again, we'd like to thank Barton for taking some time to provide us a tip this week. You can check out Southern Oak Kennels online, on Facebook, all the social media stuff. So thank you to Barton. What do you think, Dan? New Year's resolution, a couple days a week. I got to think, if you got a dog and you're serious about it, that's probably something you ought to take on.
Yeah, and we're seeing a lot of guys with the new puppies, or they're going to be getting a puppy soon. So 3 days a week, 15 minutes each. You should be able to sneak that in. I seem to have trouble or excuses with it, and that's part of my New Year's resolution as well, is just to work with Kimber more. But I think a main part of that you want to work on for sure is the obedience part. Even if you can get 5 to 10 minutes of that in, and work on retrieves, as they come, then go with that. But Barton has great tips, and I would love to work with, or watch his dog's work, because I'm sure that's just amazing. So kudos to him. His operation's really taking off there, and like you said, the grind and Bill there at Dakota is running one of his dogs all season. So if you watch that, you'll get to see some of his dogs in action.
Yeah, I think the thing to keep in mind with dogs here is that you get in you get out what you put in. So if you're not working with your dog and keeping their skills sharp, you cannot get upset, if they break on you out in the field or whatever the case might be. So, it's kind of one of those things. It's just as important as rigging your decoys and getting the blinds brushed and stuff like that. If you're going to hunt with a dog, you got to make sure that the dog's capable and ready to go in the field. So, as always, great tips from Barton, and I know a lot of guys really enjoy that part of the show. So we're happy that we can get that for you. I think I want to go into the next piece of this show here, and just take a few minutes to kind of talk about what we did here. And, and I'm referring to our discussion and our interview with Tayloe Emery of Mount Airy Farm here in Warsaw, Virginia. And, I know this is kind of like a local thing, and, a lot of guys that listen across the country don't know specifically the farm that we're referring to, but to give you some historical context here, Tayloe reached out to us about coming down and hunting with him on his family property, and unfortunately Dan wasn't able to make it due to scheduling conflicts and stuff like that, but it's only a couple hours for me, so I headed down there, and I did a little bit of reading about the farm and stuff like that before I went down there, but it's really it was kind of a cool, really unique sort of hunt experience. It's a unique crossroads of waterfowl heritage and historical significance to our country. So this area of Virginia is where a lot of things have taken place in the American history. And I went into the house that they have on the farm, and as I'm walking in, Tayloe says to me, "Okay, this is your wing right here." And I mean, literally, I had like an entire section of the house, like a wing off of the main thing, just all to myself. And the fireplace in the kitchen was, where George Washington stood with, dignitaries and prepared meals. And, the house is over 200 years old. And as I mentioned, the farm has been in his family for over 400 years. So, I'm a history buff. I went to college with the expectations of being a history major. then I realized I didn't want to be a history teacher and changed. But I do love history, and especially American history. And it was really cool to just sit down with Tayloe and talk about the fact that he has letters from George Washington referring to hunting waterfowl in the same creeks that we were hunting, the next morning. And, just to see the work that they've put into the farm, and they've built impoundments, and they're just, they're really doing a lot of great things was really cool, and just a unique experience. I really had a great time. Unfortunately, like most of the places in Virginia this year, the birds didn't really cooperate. We haven't got, they're suffering the same kind of drawbacks that we are having as far as, migration and stuff. We saw some birds. We just didn't get a ton of opportunities. It was a tough day, but, the experience there was awesome. Tayloe and his brother Jeff took me around the farm, showed me all the cool stuff. And, I definitely look forward to getting back and hunting with those guys again. Really, really great people. So I'm excited to share this interview with you guys. It was our first time going out on the road and kind of doing an interview in person. So I'm excited about kind of how this all worked out, and, hopefully we get opportunities to do this again in the future. So, without further ado, let me go ahead and get into this. It's our, interview with, Tayloe Emery of Mount Airy Farms. All right. So on this episode of the show, we've got somewhat of a first for us. We're, doing our first on-site interview, and we're here at the Mount Airy Farm in Warsaw, Virginia, with Tayloe Emery. And Tayloe was nice enough to invite us down here and to check out his family's farm and to hunt with these guys and show us a little bit about what they've got going on here. And unfortunately, Dan wasn't able to make it down, but I've been down here, and Tayloe and his family have been showing me around the farm, and we're sitting in their beautiful home that they've restored, and just a really, really great setup that they have here in a very interesting place. So we're really happy to chat with Tayloe here for a little while. Again, Tayloe, thank you so much for having me down. I really, really appreciate it.
Well, I'm glad you're here, Josh. And Dan, we missed you, but I know you're busy shooting banded drakes up north while we were out chasing marsh chickens today. But no, it was fun. We had a good time this morning. Wish we'd had a couple more birds. It was a slow day, but the whole migration seems to be delayed this year. But got some cold weather coming in. Things got to pick up.
Yeah, I mean, this year's been tough. I don't know if it's the whole El Nino thing or what it is, but we've had really warm temperatures here in Virginia, and we just haven't really got that good push quite yet. But there are a few more birds working the area, and I think, like you say, things are going to pick up here for us the last month of the season. But I wanted to share a little bit with the audience here today about Mount Airy Farm and what you've got going on here. For those that aren't from this area, this particular area of Virginia is very rich in history and heritage for the founding fathers of this country. So, Tayloe, tell us a little bit about your farm here and sort of the historical significance of the property and its ties to waterfowl hunting, in the past.
Sure. Well, Warsaw, Virginia here is located in the northern neck of Virginia, and this is this sort of area of land in between the Potomac and the Rappahannock rivers as they feed into the Chesapeake Bay. Traditionally, it's been an area with lots of traditions in hunting, especially waterfowl hunting, but also there's great deer hunting here and fishing. We do a lot of fishing on the rivers. We get a really good push of Canada geese that come through here, and we have a lot of mallards and black ducks. We get lots of teal. It's traditionally here on Cat Point Creek and around this area of the northern neck, the waterfowl hunting can be from good to excellent. It has its slow days, but for the most part, we shoot a lot of birds right here. We have a lot of fun chasing them. There's a lot of great people here. The northern neck, like you said, is really steeped in history. George Washington's birthplace and Robert E. Lee's birthplace are both within about 12 miles from here. A lot of people don't know that. The two greatest American generals ever were born within 10 miles of each other. Their families were actually very close. Mount Airy, my property here, is actually land that's been in my family for 400 years. The house here is 251 years old, and it's a National Historic Landmark. And something that makes this property a little bit special is that Francis Lightfoot Lee, a signer of the Declaration of Independence, is actually buried here on the property. He married a woman named Rebecca Tayloe, who would have been my great aunt. And you know, in our correspondence, we found that George Washington and John Taylor III used to shoot waterfowl here on the property on Cap Point Creek. And that's been kind of neat, knowing that my family has been shooting ducks here for, you know, hundreds, 300, 400 years, and that we're carrying that kind of heritage around. The history here is second to none. I do really enjoy waterfowl hunting here with my family and friends. And just recently, we've opened up Mount Airy to bringing in people from outside who want to come in and experience what we call a historic hunt, which is, you know, we're not really a whack 'em, stack 'em place. That's not to say that we're not relentless in our pursuit of waterfowl, but we're not a whack 'em and stack 'em place, so to speak. We're not in Arkansas. We're not in Louisiana. And, you know, to that effect, we bring in sort of different kinds of hunters. We bring in people who are as much interested in the history of this house and in the history of this area as they are in shooting waterfowl. And that makes it, for me, more fun.
You know, it's interesting because, you know, I came here last night, and when I got in, it was dark, and, you know, so I didn't really know what to expect. And we drove out to the blinds this morning, and then, you know, coming back and seeing everything in the daylight, it's just, you know, you know, you can feel the heritage and the history of the property and the way that you guys have maintained everything. And, you know, part of me almost feels like it's a place that I could see an episode of the Ducks Unlimited series that they do, where, you know, they go someplace and they film a hunt, and they spend as much or if not more time talking about what's going on at that particular piece of property, or the family that hunts it, or the group that's, you know, preserved it, and things like that. And there's just so much more that goes on here than just waterfowl hunting, which is really cool, and it's a really unique experience. And I got to go out and, you know, see the cemetery and you know, check out that stuff. And it's just, you know, as a history buff myself, it's really cool and something that I really think is neat. And, you know, you've mentioned that you've been opening the property up here, recently to some waterfowl hunts, and you've been making some pretty dramatic improvements to the property, geared specifically towards waterfowl and waterfowl hunting, and, you know, sort of some things that are necessary to help not only attract, but hold birds here on the property. You guys have a really expansive piece here, so you've got the ability to do that. Talk to us a little bit about some of the additions that you've made, and, you know, and kind of talking beforehand here, tell us a little bit about some of the resources that you needed to lean on that sort of helped you in your decision making and sort of the strategy that you've taken with the farm.
Sure. Well, Josh, you know, I'm very fortunate in that I was able to take over my family's farm here at a very young age. I tell a lot of people I'm the first one in my family who moved here to Mount Airy that didn't move here to retire. You know, this has been a house that for generations and generations, the older members of the family, as they were on their way out, lived here for 10 years. And it was one of those places where time just stood still. Right. My grandfather was a colonel in the U.S. Army, and he raised me from a very young age. He told me and the rest of my brothers and sisters that he wanted us to take over this farm and to make it our home. And in order to do that, you have to find a way to live. It's, you know, a lot of people say all the time, you know, having a property like this is like owning a pet elephant. Everybody wants one, but no one wants to feed the pet elephant, right? It takes a lot of money to run this huge, massive house. And that's why we did just restore part of the wing. This wing that we're sitting in right now was actually the old service wing, and where all the storage of everything in the house. It's where the old kitchen was, you know, hundreds of years ago. But it hadn't been used for 150 years. It was just sitting here doing nothing. So my wife and I decided that we wanted to make this more of a waterfowl retreat. And to do that, we were going to need to put people here in this wing. And I reached out to HGTV and got them to come help us restore this house. And we actually created a show called American Rehab Virginia, which just aired on HGTV or DIY. You can get it up on any of the Amazon or iTunes or anything like that. It's called American Rehab Virginia, and it was a whole year that we spent here rehabbing the house so that we could bring in duck hunters. And we talk about it in the show, and, you know, we explore kind of some of the properties and stuff. And like you said, you know, I've got a really expansive part of Cap Point Creek, which is a tributary of the Rappahannock River, which then goes into the Chesapeake Bay. And you have a pretty good number of ducks there that hold during the winter. And I've got maybe a dozen blinds up and down the creek. But what I really wanted to get into, Josh, was converting more of my land over for waterfowl, not just relying on hunting in the creek and the food that may or may not be out there in that creek, but actually building impoundments here on my property. It's something I didn't know a lot about, to be honest with you. And I had some friends and some cousins who had done a little bit at other places. And as I learned more about it, I thought it was something that I wouldn't be able to afford. And I reached out to a couple people. I was lucky I met this guy named Chip Rohr, who works with Ducks Unlimited up in Alexandria in Washington, D.C., and he put me in touch with the guy who's running Ducks Unlimited here in Virginia, and I forget his name. But eventually, through some back and forth, we were able to get the DGIF out here, which is the Department of Game and Inland Fisheries, and they helped me create these impoundments in terms of doing the surveying. And what I did, Josh, was I took parts of our land that weren't agrible and that we were using for pasture land for cows, and I basically we got rid of the cattle and took that land that was moist anyway, that was holding water, and we developed that land into impoundments. And what we do is we put in a water structure which will allow you to flood the impoundment or drain the impoundment of water. And in the spring, you plant it full of Japanese millet or corn or food that ducks like. And in the fall, you stop off the drain structure, and it holds your water. And theoretically, that's going to bring in your birds. Now, this year, we actually played around with a couple of our impoundments, and we're probably going to need to make some tweaks next year. We aren't seeing a ton of birds in there right now, but again, I'm not seeing a ton of birds anywhere. So It could be this last month of the season, we're going to see birds everywhere. But it's been a lot of fun building this impoundment. It's been a lot of fun putting the time and the effort into creating a space where even more waterfowl are going to use. Because the argument is that, we're building this and we're putting in corn, and isn't that baiting or something like that? But really what's going on here, Josh, is that you're aiding that migration. And that's something that the DGIF and Ducks Unlimited and Delta Waterfowl spent a lot of time, working with me on, is that there are more ducks and geese that are going to take advantage of those impoundments than I could ever shoot. Right. You can't go in there and shoot them every day. I might go in there and shoot them once a week. The other 7 days, they're in there fueling up and keeping on going for their migration. And that's good because, when we're here on the Eastern Flyway here, sometimes, when the stuff starts freezing up, there isn't a lot of food up and down this flyway. And I want to make sure that my property is holding birds, that I've got food. It's going to make a better hunt for people who come here. And this isn't something that just, some people with big properties can do. I think there's a lot of turnover now. Baby boomers are, retiring or passing on, and younger generations are taking over these farms. Something that everyone can do is think about, how can I improve my property? Do I have a pond? Can I build a pond? Can I put in an impoundment? Because like I said, it's not just about shooting birds. You're actually aiding waterfowl and aiding the waterfowl migration by creating habitat, creating food on your property for these waterfowl.
Right. And it's not, and it's not like, let's use your property for an example. It's not just the birds that are going to utilize it on the way down, but it's going to be birds that are going to hit it on the way back up.
Well, it's funny you say that, because last year when I put in the impoundment for the first time, we didn't pump water in because it was an area that naturally held water. Well, it didn't hold water till January, okay? Mm-hmm. February and March, every bird on their way back up from the migration. I went out there one day, 150 pintails swirling over my head, 200 mowers trying to land on me, and I was like, wow, this is going to be neat. Yeah. And again, we haven't had that this year yet. I haven't had that big push. A lot of those birds are still up north. I'm hopeful. I think it's going to happen, and when it does, I'm going to be out there to meet.
Yeah, no question. I think we went out and took a look at the impoundments today, and the setup is awesome. You've got everything in place. It's just a matter of time before you get those those little tweaks and everything squared away, so that you can really take advantage of that as on the hunting perspective. But another thing that you mentioned too, with a lot of guys either coming into property or, want to farm for ducks on their property and that kind of thing. I think a lot of people think that, if you get in with Ducks Unlimited or Delta Waterfowl, that there's always this massive marriage that has to happen, and a lot of things that take place. But they can be a great resource just to sort of start the discussion, even, and just kind of get an idea: is this something that would be beneficial, and kind of what you'd be looking into to even take on building impoundment or something like that. So.
That's right. And 5 years ago, when my wife and I first took over Mount Airy, that's exactly what I did. I reached out to Paul Waite at Delta Waterfowl. He works their magazine there. He's the editor there, and I invited him to come. And also reached out to John Devaney, who's one of the vice president of policy there. Spends a lot of time in Washington D.C. Yeah. At the same time, I also reached out to a couple other organizations, but you know who showed up? Those guys from Delta Waterfowl. Yeah. And that was neat. They showed up and they came here and they hunted with me for 3 or 4 days. And John Devaney walked around with me my whole property, and he gave me a lot of tips and he told me a lot of things. He put me in touch with a lot of people. And I'm glad to say John's still one of my good friends today, And so you're right. Tapping into those organizations and trying to get some feedback from them. You got to be persistent, because I think they're hearing from lots of people all the time. They can't always get back to everyone. But I found that Delta Waterfowl especially is incredibly communicative and helpful to duck hunters, and especially for people who are trying to put in impoundments and improve their property.
Delta Waterfowl has been great to us, and John Devaney has been on the show and has been super accommodating to us. So, we're obviously big fans of the guys at Delta, and, here, keeping it locally for a minute, I know they were very instrumental in the fight to approve Sunday hunting here in the state of Virginia. So now that we've got that in place, it really opens up a lot more opportunities for the guys that are working during the week and all that kind of stuff. So
Sunday hunting's been a boon to me, because I used to get hunters that would want to come, and they wanted to come for the weekend, but they could only hunt Saturdays.
Right.
And so some would try to come on Fridays, but it wasn't conducive to my business to booking hunts here if I couldn't hunt on Sundays.
Right.
They could go Arkansas. They could go somewhere else, Louisiana. Now you get people from D.C., Richmond, who are like, hey, maybe I'll stay here because I can go away. I can go shoot Saturday and Sunday and be home Sunday afternoon.
Right.
So we were completely booked up this year, but that's another thing that I wanted to tell you, is that the way we run our business here, Josh, is that we only take in one group at a time, and we only book on weekends. Occasionally I'll take people out, like here in January, we're starting to pick up. I'll take people out in the middle of the week if I've got birds. But by keeping the pressure down here on our property and on our birds, all right, I only take in one group, and that's from 2 to 4 hunters, and they're here from, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, hunting with us 2 days. And then what we also do is we do 2 morning duck hunts and then an afternoon goose hunt. And then you've got a full meal here at the big house, sitting at the dining room table where John Taylor's, ate with George Washington and stuff. So the whole history here of the house tied in with the hunting, what we try to do is just a complete package for people. Last year I had these 2 gentlemen who came from California with their double barrel Parkers, and all they wanted to do was get a trophy black duck. It was on their list, which we were able to get for them. But it was these 2 gentlemen in their 80s, and they came here and they had a ball, and that's what makes it kind of special sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you, it kind of took me aback a little bit. Like I said, I came here in the dark last night, but, we came into the house and, we were walking and, through the hallways and stuff. And then you're like, all right, this is your wing here. And, I mean, like you said, I got, kitchen, bedrooms, wood burning stove and the furnace in the room with me and stuff. So really just a cool, very unique experience, the type of place where you could bring the family, where, you're out hunting in the morning and then you come back and, you got your family and you're doing stuff in the afternoon kind of things too. So, again, just a great experience, really, really cool, neat place. I did want to touch on something though that you mentioned a little bit ago. You mentioned having several blinds, in these tributaries that ultimately lead into the Chesapeake. And obviously you're hunting in that area and you're talking tidal marshes, rising and falling waters every day. Talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you face. We hunted some spots today where we had to keep an eye on the water because of, obviously when the tide starts going out, but talk about, a little bit more as far as the benefits and the challenges that, relate specifically to duck hunting. Cause I know we've got a lot of guys that hunt in Jersey and some other tidal areas that are probably, facing a lot of same challenges.
Yeah, you're right. And hunting a tidal marsh like that does present its challenges. I'm going to tell you the best thing I ever did, Josh, which was About 5 years ago, I went down to Louisiana to a place called Honey Break. And I got in with a guy down there by the name of Drew Keith, good friend of mine who runs Honey Break Lodge and runs the hunting down there. I produced the Honey Break experience for the first season or season and a half that it was on the air. And I learned more in that season and a half hunting with these Louisiana guys, not just on the approaches, but on how you get in there and get out. Because in Louisiana, you got your own challenges there. You got your swamps, you got your bayous, you got, and these guys have boats and mud motors and every device known to man to get you out there. And when I came back here, we had a little John boat and our little, 4 horsepower motor. And I said, we're changing everything. First thing I did was I went out and I got myself a low draft, all aluminum welded War Eagle boat. And I got myself a Mud Buddy,
I was going to say we weren't
surface drive.
We weren't hunting on any four horsepower outboard today.
No, we put the 35 horse, and now we can get in and out. And I wish I'd had that 20 years ago. But having a good boat, and especially one with a surface drive here in these tidal flats, these tidal areas, means everything. Because before, I'm dependent on this motor that may or may not push me up and down this creek and this water and having to find everything. Now with this boat, I can just skim over, 2 or 3 inches, 4 inches of water. I can get in and out. So that's a big thing, is making sure you got a good boat with a good motor to get to the right spots. Because watching tides, anybody who hunts up and down here on the East Coast and stuff like on the water, all we do is watch the tides and we watch the moon and try and how many hours can I hunt before I have to turn around and start coming back before I run out of water. And occasionally, you are going to get hung up on a sandbar or something like that. So the other thing is that you got to be prepared. You got to be prepared for the worst. I'm always, set up with, besides just cell phones, I carry a Spot, which is, a GPS, emergency beacon locator. If I get in trouble out on that marsh somewhere and I can't get out of there, I'm hitting that thing and, they're sending in the helicopters to come find me. It's a investment into your future, into your safety. But on top of that, I'm also making sure that I've got everybody as part of the team. You know what I mean? And that means like when you go out, a lot of times people, okay, well, I'm just going to drop you off and I'll do all the setting up and I'll do this. It doesn't work like that a lot of times in a tidal marsh. Everybody has to have a job. We got to get people, lined up. You're in the spot because we're not always hunting in a blind. That's the important thing here is that a lot of these birds will move to different spots on our property. And I'm not just going to sit 300 yards away from them and try and call them over. I'm going to get on the X and where they are. And sometimes that means trying to get the boat back in little narrow sloughs and stuff like that. So you need to make sure everybody on your crew, is physically capable to hike through the mud, to, push the boat if you get stuck,
Yep.
Another thing is I like to go out almost every day, but I can't always find people to go with me. Sometimes I have easier spots that are easier to walk in that I'll go when I'm by myself because it just makes sense, There are some really tricky spots out there, and if I go out by myself in some of these places, the chances that something's going to go wrong is a lot.
Yeah, I mean, no question. We talk a lot about on the show about having that plan, and the first time to think about a plan, for example, what am I going to do when I fall if I flip my canoe or something like that? The first time to be thinking about that is not when you flipped your canoe and you're sitting in the water now and your waders are filling up, kind of thing. Having a plan ahead of time. So it's like that when you're hunting tidal marshes and having a plan to get in and out, and we deal with that up where I hunt in the Potomac, and I've started carrying the DeLorme InReach, which has the SOS distress call like you were talking about. So if I fall overboard or something like that, it's water resistant. I grab it, I punch that, and I know people are help is on the way. So unfortunately, we've recently seen it where there's been some unfortunate situations where guys have not made it back from a duck hunt and stuff like that. So always want to reinforce the safety aspect of it and having that plan. So, the bugger of it is though, as some of the best duck hunts you can have are on those low tide days.
That's right.
So they don't like to make it easy on us, but if you can find a way to get back into those areas, that's when you can really get on them.
And that's where you're right. And that's where you have to put in the time before the season. Someone who's much smarter than me, a guy named Jared Moffitt, who works at Honey Break, and he's the head guy down there. And Toxie Hayes from Mossy Oak, he said to me once, Jared is the duck hunter he ever duck hunted with. And I would probably agree with that. Jared said to me once, he said, Tayloe, he said, it's the 300 days of the year that's not duck season that you put in that makes a good 60-day season. You have to be out there, getting prepared, getting ready. You want to get out and know where those low spots are, where those high spots are. During the summer, when it's a little bit warmer, you can get out and push your boat around if you have to. I know that creek now like the back of my hand. You saw us this morning as we were going up and down it. There was fog coming out off the water. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And it's easy to get lost and turn around and back in there. But I've spent a lot of time out on that water, and that's really, I think, the best thing that you can do. You got to know your spots. You got to know where you're hunting. You got to know where you can get out for trouble. You got to know where the nearest house is if you did have to, paddle out of the water and walk to safety. Duck hunting is it can be a real dangerous sport. We unfortunately lost someone near here a couple of years ago who was a VMI student, which is, Virginia Military Institute. These guys aren't, weak or timid in anything. And he was out hunting by himself, and they found him floating in the water. They don't know what happened to him. He either slipped or fell or something. But, so hunting by yourself can be dangerous just intrinsically as it is, So I always try to take a buddy or a friend if you can. I'm lucky. I got 2 young sons that are growing up behind me, Josh.
Yeah.
And they're already, identifying birds, 30 yards out after they've been hit before they come back to the blind. So I'm happy that these kids love duck hunting. They're following in my footsteps. All they want to do is work here at Mount Airy and continue to, what it is that we're doing here in terms of making it a waterfowl destination. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. Little steps. Our impoundments are getting better. We're going to make little improvements everywhere we can so that the stay here and the hunting here, are the best in Virginia.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know just, getting to meet the family a little bit here today and chat with them. Your boys are tore up with it, and I think you got a couple on your hands there. They're going to be maybe showing you a thing or two here in a few years. But just to follow up one more thing that you were talking about, as far as what you're looking for in the preseason and preparing and everything. One other thing I always like to remind guys is as important as it is to know where you're going and how to get there and how to get out, it's also as important to know those days when it's a day where you said it's a day that we need to stay home. There's never, there's always going to be a point where the wind's too much or the tide's just, whatever it is, that's, it's always better sometimes to live and hunt the next day maybe.
That's true. I took a couple guys out maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and it was a big front that was pushing through. And these guys came from Michigan. There was a fellow there with 2 sons, and these guys were ready to go. And when we got to the boat the next morning, man, the creek had white caps on it, and then big wind. There was no way we were getting to the blind. And I just made the judgment call and said, boys, we're going to go to this walk-in blind. I've been seeing some geese there. Everybody grab some goose decoys. We'll go out there. When we get out there, we set these goose decoys. Well, it isn't more than an hour before every goose in the world starts piling in there. And I say, take them, boys, stand up. And I turn around and only myself and the old man had jumped up to shoot. The 2 boys were sitting down with their heads burrowed into their jackets. They weren't moving at all. It was that kind of cold. They didn't care. You know what I mean? That's how cold it was when you're not even shooting when the birds are laying.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I'm guilty of that as anybody. I always think, well, it's not too bad. And, but they're, as you get a little bit older and, I got kids now and stuff, you start thinking a little bit bigger picture. And, you always hate to see those accidents happen. And unfortunately, we just recently saw some here on the news, but, we've been sitting here chatting, and as much as I enjoy doing this show with Dan, sitting here in at the house and hearing the fire crackling over here.
You could get used to it.
Yeah. I mean, this isn't all bad. I mean,
well, look, I'm just going to put this out. I don't know. You need Dan. Maybe you could just, roll around to different people's, Dan, farms.
He doesn't mean that, Dan. He's just kidding. But in all seriousness, I do appreciate you, extending the invitation to us and, and allow me to come down and spend a little time with you and your family. And, I think it's just so cool that, this is a property that's been in your family for, 400 years or better. And, it's still, as relevant today as it was, and what you're doing with here is great. And talk a little bit about, just kind of to close us up here, what do you see long term here for the farm? And, where do you see it going, and what do you see being sort of the the goal that you're pushing for?
Well, right now we're probably going to double, if not triple, the impoundments that we've got here on the property. So that's what I'm really focusing on is how to make this property even better for duck hunting and goose hunting than it is now. And when I reach that point, I suppose then maybe I'll start taking in 2 groups, a weekend or something like that. But for right now, I just like kind of keeping it small and taking one group at a time. I think that the people who come here are glad that they're the only ones here. They know they're going to the best spot that I have because there's nobody else here.
Right.
So we're going to keep doing what we're doing. I mean, the idea here for me and my wife, Catherine, to live here is that I don't want to have to drive to Washington, D.C. or Richmond every day and work a second job. I want to make this my main focus, Mount Airy, and making this farm work. Not just for growing corn and soybeans and everything I do, but making the duck hunting work, making the turkey hunting work so that, it creates enough of a salary for me to raise my kids here and stay here and not be gone,
right, 5
days a week, which would happen. Everybody else who lived here, they didn't work here. They work somewhere else. So I want to make it a business. It's not, in this day and age, Josh, it's not enough just for me to pass this farm off to my kids when I die and have it be a liability. I need to make this a working farm that's bringing in a salary and money for them if they decide that they want to stay here and work here. You know what I mean? I don't want it to be what's the word? I don't want it to be a stone around their neck. I want it to be a place that supports, their families and their futures. So that's really what we're pushing to. People should come check us out. We're booked this year. I'm all booked up, but I'm starting to book already for next year. People should come give us a visit. Get up on the website, take a look. We're at mountairy.farm. We're all booked up for this year, but we're starting to book for 2016 and 2017 after that. And, if anyone wants, a historic hunting experience, wants to come down and check out what it is that we're doing here, we'd love to show you.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of a neat deal here. It's, there's a lot of places that you can go and someone will take you duck hunting. There's no doubt. But there's not a lot of places that you're going to go and stay in a 200-plus-year-old home and, hunt on a property that's been in your family for, as many generations as it has. And, for anyone in Virginia, the historical relevance of the area and stuff. So just a really cool deal here. And I'm really glad that, you offered the invitation to come down here and I was able to come check it out. Definitely recommend anybody check you out, mountairy.farm. You guys are on Facebook and, social media and stuff like that. So definitely can check it out there. And, Tayloe, again, I appreciate you allowing me to come down. And, I know I'm going to send, Dan pictures of the farm here and he's going to be jealous that he didn't make the trip, but, maybe next time. And, this is cool for us being able to come and do an on-site type of thing. And it gives us an opportunity to give our listeners a little more than just strategy stuff. This is kind of more of a waterfowler lifestyle type piece and, just something more to the duck hunt other than just, the killing of ducks and things like that. So again, we definitely appreciate it and encourage everybody to check you out at mountairy.farm. All right. I just want to again say thank you to Tayloe for inviting us down. Encourage anybody that may be interested in checking out what they have going on there to check out Mount Airy online. And it's just a cool spot where waterfowling heritage meets history, Dan. And it really does feel like one of those places where you could have one of those DU film series take place there. It's just one of those things where it's a piece of history that's been in Tayloe's family for so many years, and he's really putting in the effort to make it a rich and thriving waterfowl spot, in addition to all of the historical significance that goes along with this particular piece of property. So it was very cool. Definitely bummed out that you weren't able to make it, and he was definitely joking in the interview. The show does need you, and we did miss you.
Sure.
So,
well, Virginia is one of my favorite spots, one of the favorite states to go to. And like you said, the history and, I just love going down and seeing all the long white wooden fences and the big houses and stuff. I mean, that's always just been super cool to me, and it really, there's not too many hunts that I pass up that I regret, but this is kind of one that I didn't have much of a choice, but it definitely hurts my inner soul that I did not make it down there, and not just for the hunting, but just the history of that place. Like you said, we did some reading, and they have a good breakdown on their website about the farm and everything that happened there, and then you send me pictures next to the fire, and having a couple beverages there, and that stung a little bit. So hopefully, maybe we can make it down there some other time. But like you said, thanks for the invite. I'm sorry I couldn't make it, but keep up the good work. I see, on his Facebook page, he's putting in a ton of work into the waterfowling there, and keep it up, because it's a beautiful spot, and I truly think that he knows what he has on his hands, and he's doing a really great job with it. So keep up the good work.
Yeah, I echo what you're saying, and I want to just thank Tayloe again, because he reached out to us, didn't know us from anyone else, and welcomed us into his farm, and I went hunting with him and his brother and his son. Came back to the house, and his wife had cooked breakfast, and we ate with his other son. So just really welcoming family, really. Just class individual, and just a cool experience. So if you're into history, and you wouldn't be listening to the show if you weren't into waterfowl, definitely, take a few minutes, just read about the spot, check it out. Very, very cool stuff going on there. So,
and we'll have his website on the show notes.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. We'll link up all his stuff on there, so be easy for you to go find it on the show notes at hpoutdoors.com. So, all right, man, let's go ahead and transition in here to the next piece of show, in which we're going to spend a little time talking about our New Year's resolutions. All right, man. So it's a new year since the last time we've had a show out, and everybody starts the new year with high hopes and plans to make this year better than the years in the past. So we thought it would be appropriate to spend a few minutes talking about our New Year's resolutions, and particularly our New Year's resolutions, waterfowl related. So kind of what we could do, or what we hope to do, waterfowl related. And I'll go ahead and let you start. And if you say something about diver spreads, I'm going to throat punch you the next time I see you.
I'm going to start my diver spread.
Is this the time when you Instagram or Facebook that picture of one canvasback decoy that you keep calling your diver spread? Is that what happens now? It needs to happen. And especially getting the pressure from you, and hopefully that'll get you to come back up here if I show you a couple boatloads of divers, So even if it's, a dozen or 2 dozen, I am going to get it started and, get the boat in order. I have a duck boat. I didn't even get it out this year, but next year will be the year, I promise. If you call 2 dozen decoys a diver spread,
hey,
I'm going to be insulted.
Well,
but
I figure
I won't. I'm not gonna get overboard here, because that's at least a step in the right direction.
If you come up, then we'll have like 8 dozen or 10 dozen, whatever you got there.
Yeah, because I'm definitely as my number one of my New Year's resolutions is I will add to my diver spread for next season, and there's a reason why I do that, because I just like buying decoys, man. It's just one of those things, and diver decoys specifically. I don't know, man. I don't know what it is. I'll be as honest as I can be. I love the Higdon foam filled life-size diver decoys. Love. And, right now they've got them in bluebills, ringnecks, redheads. I got all of them. And I will be adding to the spread next year. So, sometimes we get a push of redheads and I want to have some in the decoys. I always throw out buffleheads, or I always throw out bluebills, always throw out a couple canvas bags, because you never know when we're going to get them here. And we get a lot of ringnecks, so I'm probably going to add some bluebills, ringnecks, and cans to my spread next year, because there's rumor going around that one of my main hunting buddies down here, Carlos, is in the market for a duck boat. So if that happens, it is on with the diver spread, buddy. I'm going much larger.
Oh, buddy.
So yeah. It's going to be an issue. So that's for me. We're lockstep so far, building onto the diver spread. What's next for you, buddy?
All right. We do get in some back swamps, just some really weird spots, and something that could definitely help us is some kind of do-it-yourself blind for my canoe, and or just some kind of pop-up blind that I can get in some really awkward situations. So, it's been a couple years now where I take the time. It takes an hour and a half to get back to our spot, and you get there, you kill a few ducks, but deep down that it could have been a much better hunt if you had some sort of blind or more cover than what we had. So, New Year's resolution, it's been too many times that we made that trip, and that's a high one on my list.
I mean, it sounds like you need to just do a little preseason work.
Well,
get out there, take some chicken wire and like a couple stakes, and zip tie some brush to them so that it's out there.
Yeah, it's a weird. I just don't know if that would work. The place that we hunt, it's probably 5 or 6 feet deep. There's no solid ground. It's all floating vegetation. We end up pulling the canoe up onto the vegetation and standing in the canoe to hunt out of it, or else you could fall through. And it's pretty difficult. So I don't know. It is floating and it could break away. So if we got out there, and that could be for naught. So I think it'd be much better if it was something that could come with us, pop up, and do the job that way.
You ought to get one of those like floating inner tubes that you can just like pull the hood over top, and it's just like all brushed in.
I thought about that too.
Just get out in the middle and float around and look like a floating beaver dam or something.
A muskrat hut. They have one called the Muskrat Hut. Looks pretty cool.
Yeah, I've seen that. That's what I'm thinking about. Yeah, that'd work. Yeah, so I've talked about it on the show a little bit here. One of my New Year's resolutions is to settle on a duck call, and I want another new goose call. And I think I got an early favorite as to what the goose call is going to be. But as I've mentioned, I've got self-diagnosed OCD, so I like them to be all the kind of the same company manufacturer on the lanyard. I mean, right now, love the Naughty by Nature zinc. Love it. I really don't need another goose call. I can hit every note that I need to, high, low, in between. I love it. But I feel like I need a big, Nightmare on Stage type call, real low, kind of thing. I don't know if I need it. I sort of feel like I want it. Maybe that's more appropriate. I did get the Nothing But Green single reed call. This is the first single reed call I've owned. It's taken some getting used to for me. But I just can't decide. Like, I need to work on it and see if that's going to be a call that I stick with, or if I try like an R&T or something different, single reed, or if I get an ATM zinc, ATM stay double reed and just, work it like that. So probably will end up staying zinc just again because of my OCD, and I like the Naughty by Nature, and I'm not giving that call up. But that's a resolution for me. Figure out what I'm doing with my calls and stick to it, because I really don't want to be a guy that spends a bunch of money on a bunch of different calls that end up just sitting on the shelves. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I would just rather buy decoys that sit on the shelf that I don't use. You know what I mean? For me, I'm just I want a couple calls that are just kind of my standard go-tos. They live on the lanyard. They don't go anywhere. I don't swap it out. It's just there. The decoys is where I want to blow my money and just let them, use some of them, not use some of them, all that kind of stuff. So settle on the calls. That's my second resolution.
My third one, it is with calls. Not so much. I'm not worried about settling on what new duck call I want, but I do want to work on my calling. And I think I said this last year too, and I didn't spend as much time as what I'd like to. So that one's back on the list. Goose and duck. The calls that I have, I think, are plenty good to get the job done. So I just need to really bear down and get my calling in order before I go and buy any new calls.
Second year in a row for that one. Just reinforce that. I'm just going to reinforce that point. Yeah, just reinforce that. Okay.
At least it's on the radar. I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, that's great. You need some action, boss. You need to be Marshawn Lynch last year in the playoffs or whatever. Just when you get about that action, boss. I need a little more action. All right, man. So my third is going to be I want to get my son more involved. Obviously, my son's 4.5 right now. He'll turn 5 in May. I don't want to take him hunting yet. His attention span is super short. I just signed him up for T-ball. Probably a mistake. Signed up to coaching. Probably a mistake. But anyway, we're doing that stuff. So we'll see how that goes. But I want to get him more into the outdoors, get him off the stupid iPad and these other things that he does. Want to get him outside more, get him more into outdoor related activities, get him more involved with the local Green Wing group here with the local DU chapter, doing some things geared towards waterfowl, just starting to get him kind of moving in that direction. So, I try to now when I bring home ducks, we take a look at them, we talk about them, we look at the colors and things like that. And I ask him all the time if he's going to be a duck hunter, and he says yes and all that good stuff. But I want to continue to reinforce that because I think that's one of the biggest challenges that I'm going to face as a parent here in the area that I live in. Dan, where we grew up, I mean, I could probably count on one hand how many people that I knew personally that didn't hunt. It was probably 5 or less. They didn't hunt at least something.
There's nothing else to do.
2-week right. I mean, maybe it was just the 2-week rifle season for deer is all they hunted, but they at least did that. And where we're from, we get the first day of buck and doe season off of school. High school's closed, elementary schools are closed. People go hunt. That's what we do where we're from. Where my son's growing up, he might not know 5 people total that hunt. So, his friends are going to be doing other things. So it's going to be up to me to instill the value of outdoors and hunting and things like that. So, it's an uphill battle that I'm fighting and, I got to start it early. So this year, getting my son involved.
Plant that seed. You're already doing it though, showing him the ducks and all that. That's interesting. So that's good stuff. But I'll go, my next one, and this is really the last one that I put on as far as the waterfowl is shooting with my camera as much as my gun. And that's going to be pretty difficult. And I know, it's tough to take the camera equipment out in the swamp and all that, but, finally getting some time away and getting out there and the chance to shoot the ducks or geese and shooting them with a camera instead. Maybe I need to work with my buddies a little bit on their shooting so I don't have to worry about it as much. But that's my last one is the waterfowl.
Well, I never take my camera with me because it ends up being more of an annoyance than anything. We just talked about this. I'm more interested in shooting with my gun. So you can come hunt with me, take pictures of me shooting birds, and we'll both accomplish what we're looking to do.
That'll work. Or you come up here, we could shoot birds over my diver spread, and I'll take pictures.
How many times have you hunted in Virginia in your life?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yep. Anyway, my last one is kind of dovetailing off of what we introduced this week into the show in our interview with Tayloe. My goal, I want to do more out-of-state hunts, and I want to do more stuff with this show that involves us going somewhere else. I want to do more things where we're going out, we're meeting new people, we're experiencing new things, and we're sort of talking about things on this show that are outside of the norm of what we do all the time. The fact that I got to go hunt somewhere completely new, talk about something, that I had, that was just historically significant and just outside the box for what I was used to, was a really awesome experience. And it's hard, we got kids and we work and all this other kind of stuff, but it's just one of those things where we have to be resolved to do this, because it's great for the show. It's great opportunities for guys that, listen to this show across the US and, may never have any, opportunity to come out to the East Coast and hunt black ducks, for example, or hunt some of these areas we have a shot at, to hunt. But, this show it's hard because we hunt a specific area, and that's what we know well, and that's what we relate a lot of stuff to. And the more that we can get outside of that box and stretch our own comfort zones is going to make us better hunters, and is going to allow us to deliver better information and content for the show. So for me, it's to get out and do more stuff on the ground and do more in-person interviews and meet more people and sort of bring new additional content to the show.
I can't really beat that one.
Well, it's easier said than done, obviously, but it's one thing that I think is important, and it's sort of a good thing for us to sort of target. But, on Facebook, we asked some of our followers to give us some of their New Year's resolutions respective to waterfowl hunting. If you're looking to lose weight or whatever, we don't really give a crap. We want to know what you're doing on the waterfowl woods and field and all that good stuff. So we got a few people send us a couple in, and I plucked a couple that I thought were pretty good. And the first one that caught my eye was from Morgan, and he said that he wants to get his, and I'm paraphrasing here, he wants to get his goose calling up to snuff. He felt like he was pretty strong duck calling. He wants to get his goose calling on plane. So that kind of is similar to what you were talking about, Dan, and it's important, I think, to be able to effectively blow your calls in the field, you got to have confidence in your abilities. So the off season's a great time to develop those skills. So definitely got time to take that on. Joe says he wants to stay positive when things go bad. Dang. How bad can it be, man? You're duck hunting, at least, you're not in the office or doing something like that. But, oddly enough, I know what he's saying here. I think, it can be frustrating when, you may only get to hunt once a week or something like that on the weekends, and you go out and it doesn't work out and you never pull the trigger or anything. That can be frustrating, You
could buy a camera and take awesome pictures.
Yeah, you could do that.
That could help
your Instagram and Facebook accounts and stuff like that.
Boom.
That's cool.
Make it boom.
Yeah. 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 This is one of my favorites right here, honestly. I think it just makes sense, and it's probably one that I could benefit, quite frankly. Ryan says he wants to simplify the process and have figure out ways to have more successful hunts with less. When I read that, I almost laughed to myself, because I was like, man, there's nothing simple about what I got going on here. I posted a picture today. I got 6 dozen diver decoys in a canoe. 2 guys that weigh over 200 pounds. We got a lot going on in that canoe, and, there's nothing simple about that, but I think there's a lot to be said for that. There's a lot of times when I look at simplifying the process, I think of it more as a mentality standpoint for me. We stand there and we hem and haw over, well, how are we going to set this decoy and this one should be there? Man, I think a lot of times that is just, we're just too used to reading DU magazine and all that kind of stuff. Throw the decoys out there and just cover up and get ready to shoot, that kind of deal. But, maybe he's taking it to from another angle, but that's what came into my mind, when I read that one. Let's see here. Steve said, quality over quantity, and doing a better job at scouting and knocking on doors. Dan, I think that's probably a real good one that a lot of people could probably take a page from. And I think I'm probably guilty. We hunt in the Atlantic Flyway, right? we can shoot limits of geese. It's real hard to shoot limits of ducks where we are. We do it, but it's hard. You got to scout your tail off, got to get a little bit of luck, and you got to get access to the places that you need to be. Real hard to do. But I can be happy going out and shooting 2 or 3 ducks if I'm with people that I enjoy spending time with, and it's a decompressing moment for me, that kind of thing. So, definitely valuing the quality is important. And I think Joe was kind of getting to that with his about staying positive, just valuing the time in the field and not gauging the success of the hunt by the amount of ducks that you shoot and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. The last one I got is Eric, and Eric wants to get his daughter out before the season ends. And, this one kind of resonated with me because, like I said, I'm interested in getting my son, more involved in the coming year. The only thing I would say, Eric, is I don't know where you live, man, but, it's the late season. It's probably pretty cold where you're at. You might want to wait till the the early season this fall before you get her out there, unless she enjoys the cold weather or something like that. But anyway, we appreciate everybody giving us their feedback, and I'm sorry I couldn't read everyone's New Year's resolutions, but those were just some of the ones that kind of caught my eye, Dan. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I appreciate the input, and there were a bunch of other good ones as well. So, thanks for the cooperation, and, we appreciate it. So, are there any other resolutions that you have that aren't waterfowl related?
There are. We don't. I'm going to go on a slight tangent, but I promise I'm not going to derail us completely here because we're already way over time. So if you're still listening to the show and you started it in the beginning, thank you, because you've been hanging around for a while. I've got 2 big ones. My first one is I'm committing in 2016 to conceal carrying my firearm with me everywhere that I legally possibly can, every single day, without excuse. So, I live, less than 30 miles outside of Washington, D.C. There, the threat that we have against, our nation's capital and stuff like that is real. We're seeing things happening across this country that, where the bad people in this world are reaching further into our lives than we've, maybe thought possible. I've got the permit. I've had the permit since I was legally of age to have it in both Pennsylvania and Virginia. It's just one of those things where it becomes a, cumbersome or whatever, and it's just easier to leave it at home. Well, if that day I decide that it's cumbersome and I leave it at home and something happens, I'll never forgive myself. So, random acts of violence and terrorism don't make appointments, and they happen when you least expect them. So for me, my number one main 2016 goal is to protect my family at all costs whenever I legally possibly can.
That right there took me back to the parting shot days. That was a great speech.
Oh boy. What about you?
Not as serious as that, but something that seems like a terrorist in my life is my cell phone, and spending less time on my phone and more time present with, whether it be my family or my friends, and not checking Facebook or emails or whatever it may be, but actually living in the moment and actually putting the technology down for a minute. It seems like it would do a lot of good for myself.
Yeah, I could probably adopt that one too.
Yeah. It's getting out of hand. You see everyone, or you try and talk to someone and they are looking down at their phone and you just want to walk out of the room, and it makes me think, if I'm doing that to someone, then I feel pretty bad about it. So, just trying to be in the moment, and there's always time to catch up online or do whatever you need to do. So that's a big one for me. Another one.
Yeah.
And
yeah, go ahead.
And it is with the weight and everything else, but as you know, I'm going to Colorado in the fall on an elk hunt with my old man. He'll be 64 this year, so if we do get an animal down, I think a lot of weight is going to be on my shoulders. So once I do get in shape, which I have to get in shape to go on the hunt, is really to stay in shape, and it's easier said than done. So that's another resolution, and hopefully that's one that I can keep year after year.
Yeah, I've so I always find it interesting about New Year's resolutions because they're hard to maintain, and I feel like they're almost the kind of thing that just sets you up for failure, because there's so much pressure of a New Year's resolution for whatever reason. You know, like you did the whole caveman diet or whatever, and then you got on the diet, like, and, you know, I did the 17-day diet kind of thing, and I just started doing it, you know, because I wanted to do it. And, you know, I lost over 20 pounds very easily, you know, wasn't that hard or whatever. And I know you've lost a lot of weight too. And this, you know, I did all of that with no cardio. It was purely diet, right? Mm-hmm. So I've started trying to do more cardio just because I want to kind of build on what I've done and, you know, continue to try to maintain that. But, you know, my other big one, man, for the 2016 is I want, and I've told you this, and I'll put it out on the air for everyone else to hear. I want to build this show. I want to build our reach. I want to build what we do. I want to build the capabilities that we have, because I truly, you know, I say this as humbly as I possibly can. I think there's no one else on the internet that's doing what we're doing and doing it as well as we do it. And I want to build that. And I think that this show and the fan base that we have, I don't even want to call it a fan base because that's not accurate. You know, it's like-minded individuals that are just like us, you know, that enjoy talking waterfowl just like we do. You know, it's a niche that we've tapped that others haven't been able to. And I'll never forgive myself if I see some other show do what I know that we're capable of doing. So that for me is what I'm taking on in 2016. And, hopefully that will provide nothing but good things for everybody. Good things for us, good things for the people that listen to this show and enjoy talking waterfowl hunting, good things for the waterfowl community. You know, all of that kind of stuff is sort of what I'm focused on, you know, for 2016. So I don't know how you feel about that, but that's how I feel about it.
I'll be right there with you, my friend.
All right. Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed our New Year's resolutions. I hope you've set yours and that you got a plan to execute them, and you know, you stick to it. And you know, the biggest thing about achieving goals is that you have to always keep in mind, never forget this, there will become a time along the way where you want to quit and you want to give up and it's too hard. And whatever it is that you're trying to do, maybe you're trying to quit smoking, maybe you're trying to diet, maybe you're trying to exercise, maybe you just want to put the phone down, whatever it is, there's going to be a time when you want to quit. It's too hard. It's uncomfortable. It's just easier to give in. And I'll encourage you to think back to when you're hearing this right now and think about this and know that that time is coming, and have the strength and the willpower to power through. And you will feel, you know, a self-fulfillment that you wouldn't expect. You know, I felt that when I did the diet thing, and I promise you, if I can diet, you can do it. You know, you can, whatever it is that you want to put your mind to, it's all about setting that mind frame of doing what you want to do. So don't give up on it this year. Make this year be the one. If you haven't already given up on it, for crying out loud, you know, maybe start it back up or whatever. But anyway, thanks for indulging us with the New Year's resolutions discussion. And we appreciate you guys sharing your ideas with us. All right, man. Well, we said coming into this, we were going to try to keep it to 30 minutes, and I'm looking at the clock, and it's now an hour and 7 minutes, not including the interview that we did with Tayloe. So we completely destroyed that timeline. But I felt like we've had some good discussion, and I kind of had fun talking to you today.
Yeah, and it's been a while, and like you say with the resolutions, the key is to not buy the sourdough pretzels, and everything else falls in line. And on top of that, just start the Making of a Murderer. Start that series right now, and before you know it, you'll be done.
Is the whole sourdough pretzel thing like a direct shot at me?
Yeah, it was.
Okay, cool. Because I wasn't sure if you knew that I had like a thing for sourdough pretzels or not. But I didn't know if you were just like throwing that out there, because I definitely do have an issue with those. So
I thought that was your number one battle.
It is completely 100% the issue, and yeah, I've been kind of struggling with that battle so far in 2016, but I've been running to try to offset it a little bit.
There you
but
go.
Yeah, no, I didn't know I forgot that we had that discussion. So yeah, that's my kryptonite right now. Complete side note. I was a big fan of Serial, the podcast, the first season. They've come out with the second season now with Bo Bergdahl on it. Fascinating stuff. If you guys are into podcasts and you haven't checked out Serial, a lot of I haven't seen Making of a Murderer, but I think it's a lot along the same lines of that. So pretty cool stuff. If you're interested, check that out. But anything else, man, that you want to cover here before we wrap this up?
No, I was talking to a couple guys online, and seasons are wrapping up. So, no matter how cold it gets or the lack of birds that you had, you're not going to shoot them from on a couch. So go out and be careful, but make the most of it. And it won't be long until it's 80, 90 degrees, 100 degrees out, and you're wishing that it was these temperatures and the opportunity to go out with a shotgun. So make the most of it. Get out there.
Yeah, you're not kidding. I mean, you say that, but I mean, the duck season seems to just fly by, and the summer seems to last so long, and I hate hot weather. I just don't. I wish it would be fall/winter year round with a couple weeks of spring just to hunt turkeys, but summer I could honestly do without. But, we got 3 weeks left here, and it feels like yesterday I was hunting in 90-degree September heat, hunting birds, but it goes by fast. I'm going to try to knock it out here, and by the next time we have an episode out, my season will pretty much be wrapped up. So we'll have a little recap kind of on how that all went, and we'll be looking kind of towards the off season. But before we go, obviously we want to take a few minutes here just to thank the partners of this show that have at least in part helped make the show possible. Sitka Gear, Sport Ear. If you go to the Sport Ear website, you can use the discount code HPOWPDoors to receive 10% off your purchase. DeLorme, you can go to DeLorme and use the discount code HPOWPDoors. That is case sensitive, all uppercase, and you can get a discount on the Earthmate iPhone or Android app. I honestly can't say enough about the guys at DeLorme. They've been incredibly good to us. So please, if you're interested in any of the kind of products that they have or in the market for anything like that, definitely give them a look. Big Al Silhouette Decoys and, of course, Higdon Outdoors. We certainly appreciate all of their support of this show. We appreciate your support of this show and taking the time to listen to us blabble on for this amount of time and this long. But like I've already said, we enjoy talking about waterfowl hunting. We know that the people that listen to this show are like-minded, just like us. So thank you again for checking us out. And we are really hopeful that 2016 will be a better year for us in this show and what we're able to bring you than what we had in 2015. Dan, any parting words here?
I don't think so, bud.
All right. So as I said, thank you for helping us make 2015 a very successful year. We look forward to an even better 2016. I hope you enjoyed our New Year's resolutions, and thank you again to Tayloe for having me down and enjoying our time at Mount Airy Farm. Check us out, hpoutdoors.com. Log on to iTunes, check out our past episodes, fill out a 5-star rating review if you hadn't had a chance already. And again, if you got a couple weeks left in your season, make sure you're getting out there, stay safe, chase them, and we'll talk to you next time. For Dan, I'm Josh. Take care.